What are some of the major changes in asset values that impact divorce actions now?
Right. So this stay-at-home order has impacted so many things in our lives, and it's made major repercussions on the economy. So therefore, all things that are divided in divorce have been impacted. And the first thing is the marital home, which David has already talked about. So that is an issue. It's possible that there's going to be less proceeds from that sale for the couple to live on. The other thing that has been impacted value-wise are the taxable investment accounts and the tax-deferred retirement plans. So due to the downturn in the stock market, except for maybe Zoom stock, the account values have plummeted. And in some cases, they've gone down as much as 30%. Another thing that gets divided in the divorce, potentially, or sold, is the family business. So since some family businesses were required, well, since non-essential businesses were required to close, then they've experienced reduced revenues. And some of these businesses have actually had to close permanently. And the fourth and last thing that gets divided, if you will, sort of a quasi-asset, is the income streams. And for those people who are employed by somebody else, maybe they've been able to stay on, maybe they've seen their paycheck reduced, or maybe they've been downsized and let go. Now, at one point, these marital assets are generally valued at the date of filing for divorce. So for divorce cases that are ongoing now, it may be advisable to conduct, and David referred to this as well, to conduct a second valuation analysis separate from the divorce date. And the other thing that I wanted to say relates to, in any event going forward, due to all of this above, it's likely that there's going to be less to divide for the family to live on as they separate into their two households, which of course are more costly than when they were in one.
So for many, this COVID-19 outbreak is causing a real liquidity crisis. Can you explain why that is, and what would you advise clients to manage this liquidity crisis?
Okay, so first it's basically, I see it two things. First is the lower account values, savings accounts, taxable investment accounts, and also with the business or your job income being less. This has resulted in cash being in very short supply for many, many families. And so what these people need to do is take advantage of the CARES Act's provisions to either obtain cash or to delay payments that are due. So I'm going to go through the list really briefly just to remind people what's out there. And if you have questions, my email will be in the chat box, and then you can email me about each one of these things and we can talk about it. But the first thing is enhanced unemployment benefits for more categories of people, including the self-employed and independent contractors. Never been able to do that before. The stimulus checks that are going out. The extended income tax payments to July 15th, as opposed to having to pay them yesterday. The 401k loan amount's been doubled to $100,000. The 401k withdrawals can be taken without a penalty, and you have 3 years to pay the taxes. If you put the money back before 3 years, there's no tax, but you've had the use of the money. There's mortgage relief for homeowners up to 360 days if you make the hardship case. There's a foreclosure moratorium for 60 days to give you time to raise cash. For renters, there's eviction relief for 120 days. The student loan payments have been suspended through the end of September with no accrued interest or penalties. RMDs are suspended so accounts can recover and you're not affected down the line. And then there's several business provisions, such as the Paycheck Protection Program. There's a SBA grant. There are other SBA loans. The SBA is giving debt relief. And the good thing, deferred payroll taxes for business owners. They don't have to pay their payroll taxes starting in March through the end of this year for 2 years. So I want to end that with, if ever there is an example illustrating why having emergency savings are so crucial, then this situation is it. I used to say you should have 3 to 6 months in emergency cash. I'm changing that to 6 to 9.
Okay, so there are a lot of divorce matters that were pending or in progress before all this COVID-19 crisis began. What is the impact on those? What are you seeing as a result of that? Is that stopping everything? I know the courts, you can't go to court. What's the impact?
Okay, totally. Totally there's been, and so basically people have to pivot, and pivots are essential. So for example, divorces that are in mediation where the sessions were held in person, do those online. For divorces that are close to completion and people are ready to sign, we can now do electronic signatures as long as everybody gets together on Zoom. Couples who are willing to work together can go back to the negotiating table and develop a different solution based on the changed situation. One thing I'm telling those couples as they regroup to reconsider how they're going to divide their assets, if it was based on a fixed dollar amount, they really need to consider using a percentage of an asset to divide for a more equitable split. If a case is being litigated, who knows when it might get a court date? So this might be a good time for that couple to try mediation or the collaborative divorce process. What do they have to lose? Some people may decide to hold off and just wait it out. Some people may decide to agree to a temporary or interim agreement for 2 to 3 years with the permanent one to follow. If the people are going to wait it out and they don't just feel like they can't live together, they can get creative with living. They can rent a small space and each person take turns living there. This also works well in families with children because the children can stay in the family home and then the parents can go back and forth to the second place. So I just want to end with, no one knows when this situation will end. The virus is still with us. No one knows how long the economic recovery is going to take. And no one knows, like you said, when courts are going to get back to work. But people should not stop moving forward. If they do, their lives are just going to stay in an indefinite holding pattern. So they need to pivot so they can resume their lives.
So can you be a little bit more specific about moving forward? What do you mean by that?
Do some of those pivots that I talked about at the top would be what I mean.
Okay, good.
So just don't stop and say, I'm going to wait this out. Just come up with some other things. Go to mediation, you know, all the things I listed.
Okay, we'll be talking about mediation in our next session, by the way. What other information would you like to tell us?
Okay, so rather than speaking about all the terrible things that happen in divorce cases, I wanted to share a story that was told to me recently by a divorce attorney mediator. Details slightly changed. I think this story is an example of just the best during this time of COVID-19. So a couple is in the midst of finalizing their divorce. They had been co-parenting, homeschooling their children together in a safe place out of New York State. So it was time to sign the agreement, which had to be done in New York. So this couple put their children in the car. They all drove for 1 hour, crossed the New York state lines, pulled over, stopped the car, and called their attorneys. Then they signed the document in front of both attorneys with everybody on Zoom and their children in the back seat.
It's quite a story. What else would you like to say? Anything else?
No, that's how I want to end, with that wonderful story.
Okay.
And I'll give you my email address. I'm going to give you my short one. It's SMT for Sally Mullins Thompson at WTforWorldTrade.net. And my phone number is 212-243-9126. But email me and I'll answer any questions you have about any of this.